Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be replacing the valve cover gasket on a BMW 335i with the N54 block. Love this car. I'll also change the PCV valve, which is quite simple, and I will touch on some subjects such as vacuum lines, spark plugs, air filter, possibly a boost leak test, and I will link them if people need them in the description. I have some shortcuts I've provided, some tips and tricks. I've also got a great hands-on step-by-step tutorial for everybody to follow. So if you're ready, let's get down to it. First thing first is you remove the cowl. First remove the air filter, cabin filter, sorry, cover, and then you remove the two covers there, disconnect the two plugs, which I have. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 screws plus 2 here, usually. And then you're just gonna pull this out, pull this one out, because they kind of just tuck onto here, and then remove the cowl. Oh, sometimes there are screws here. I added one here. I don't know if everybody else has it, but I think they do. Now I'm trying today with a headset around my head. Yep. Light right here, this Costco light is freaking awesome. Rechargeable. This is just one piece and it's magnetic. I can't get over. Basically, this just has to go a quarter turn like that. That means it's unlocked. Take that off. That's it. It's an E18. Okay. Definitely going to need a breaker bar if this is torqued down to spec, which I recall doing last time. These are 16s and the back one's an 18. So this one's on top. Keep the orientation in mind because last time I took them both out, I had a little bit of trouble getting it back through that thing perfectly and kind of bows upwards. The crease is on the bottom. This is a hot wire, so if you ground it to any point, you'll spark and probably pop a fuse, so I'd recommend disconnecting the battery. An E10 in the back for me, and it was a T30 right here and here, so I'm gonna eventually zip tie these guys up here once I'm for sure that I'm gonna leave them on, which I'm pretty sure I am. Funny part is this head has already been removed, not by me, because there's an extra screw there. What I'm going to do first here is probably remove the coil packs. Why is that popping? So satisfying. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the intake. You might not have to do everything, but I'll notate the steps I could have bypassed at the end, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna do other things in the next couple days too, so. Move this line, I think is the brake booster. Putting pressure like that. that clamp. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4 clips. 5 clips. I knew that was the first one. Okay, the only difference is these. We'll just lift off. Pull off this way under these. And you can see, you don't have to do this, but you can see the plug right there. This thing just kind of pops off. One, two, three. Now that's removed. I'm going to take the O2 sensor harness thing out of the thing out of the holder by using two. Oh, that one's already off. Okay. So kind of just put one in there and put one in here. Actually, you can do one at a time. Looks like you just gotta watch if you can see closely that it comes off, and that one comes off. Just try to do it carefully so you don't break these. They look already kind of brittle. This one right here was broken, but you got to be careful. You just kind of lift these up and over. Mine are so brittle. There are 3 in total. This one's already broken, so I'm just gonna leave it. I might actually glue it, super glue that later. So there are the fuel rail bolts. I'm going to relieve the pressure from this rail because I'm gonna disconnect the lines here. So my car's nice and cold. I barely drove it in the garage and turned it off quick, so it should be okay. This is a 17 millimeter. Okay. Bad. Why does gas smell so damn good? Take off the connectors, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the ground wires, which there are 3 of right there. And then we're going to loosen the things from the injectors right here. In fact, I'm gonna loosen these first. It's a 14. Okay. Make sure when you loosen them you don't bang into the line because these things are fragile. If you can prevent it. Yeah, this would be better for a stubby one, but let me see if I can just do it without it. Okay. To undo this connector in the back here. Clip is underneath, it feels like. So it just slid off. Basically, I just squeezed the back end there. I hope you can see this right there. These bolts right here are 11 millimeters. Okay, they're not that tight, obviously, if I'm getting them off with a small 1/4 inch socket drive. Make sure that the line here clears. The nut kind of pushed it forward, so if you put the nut towards the top, it kind of gets out of the way. Make sure that all the lines are loose. Some of them seem to be locking in a little bit. Okay, now the fun part, getting around the oil thing. So I kind of just turned it, and it's squishy, but I kind of angled it to fit right in between here. All right, so this guy's out. So now I'm going to take these off. I have a small flathead, but I'm sure you can use a hook or something or anything. But basically what it looks like is this, and the connector is this little nub, faces that way. And what you do is you just kind of stick it in there and just pry gently, because you don't want to snap these clips, just so gently, and then wiggle it out. So let's see if I can get a good view here. I'm going to pry it in just very gently. Wiggle it out. That's it. Because you snap those, that would be pretty crappy. You could fix anything, but that wouldn't be ideal. Another smart move is actually do the ground loops first, because they keep getting in the way, but it's too late for me now. So if you can't see it, you can remember that the entire clip line is the same level, so you can just see this part right here. So I know that it's somewhere right here, even though I can't see it. It's just I can't get the damn screwdriver in there because this AC line, there we go. And you pull it out, try not to pull on the wire, just in case. I mean, they're pretty strong, but these are 8mm, and they should be, yeah, they're literally finger tight almost. Okay. Make sure you don't drop these tiny little nuts. I need to remove this line. Actually, there's two little vacuum lines here too that I need to remove. I forgot because I just noticed the line here. Oh, they're twisting actually by hand. It's probably time to replace those suckers. Maybe. I'm not squeezing too tight, but just enough, I think, to break loose that. Yeah, see, now this part's twisting. This normally twists, but God, it's a pain. All right, those two lines came off right here. Man, those suckers could use replacing. I might get new lines. Okay, so those two are off. Remove this. I just see two bolts. Look like, yep, they are E10s. Okay. Might need to use an open end. You'll feel it. So there's a prong, and I'm lifting it like this, like there's a tab. It's got to be a ring like this. I'll show it. And there's a tab on top, so I'm pulling the tab like this. So that feels it. That's it. That's it. Yeah, you'll feel like a plastic clip in here. It's like wedged in between. BMW couldn't just give us like another 6 inches of play, could they? that would have cost them an extra half a penny per car. Probably could have pulled this out and saved me a little bit of... Yep, okay, so definitely note to someone else, pull this harness out first and it'll give you more play on this damn thing. Right here. Yeah, that's a lot more play. Okay. I'll use two little flat heads. Okay, it sounded bad, but it wasn't. So what I did is I just put pressure right here that way, and then just did one at a time. I didn't even need two things. So I just did one, and it kind of held 2, 3, 4, and then it snapped off. I do need to remind to pull these vacuum lines right here out of the way. That's kind of good. Try not to bend these too much. The one mistake I did make earlier is I showed putting the little 8mm back on here. You have to take them off because this is actually a 10mm down here, and this is just a regular deep socket. Put it on there, and then I'll just put the socket, I'll just put it like halfway in. That should work. Yeah, so it's kind of tight, but there are 28 bolts total. I had to look at a diagram, and I will attach a diagram to this that I have, but these are the two grounds, or the ground studs, 3, sorry, 1, 2, 3. And then there's that bolt there, that bolt there, there, there. You can see them. They're all E10s. So these all around the perimeter like this in a U, all those E10s, I think there are 26 of them. I am not going to waste camera time recording this, but basically this is the important part right here, is I kind of just put it halfway in. You can buy a really deep socket, I guess, but this worked for me. And then the rest are just E10s. So I just want to make a quick note that maybe disconnect the fuel lines dead last before you, like even loosen all the bolts you can and disconnect these dead last, because the fuel smell is just getting ridiculous. I've gotten all the perimeter bolts here and here, and I'm working on these last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think, or 4. I am going to remove the rest of that vacuum line here. I'm going to do the same thing for this side. Hopefully this is visible. I'm going to just put pressure the opposite direction. I have to hit the bottom pin from the back. Okay, so I twisted it until I could hit that bottom pin. And I got it out. Just remember the orientation, that this angled part goes onto the valve cover, this goes onto the other part where the sensor is. Also note that these bolts don't come all the way out. They just loosen and then they hang there, which is cool. So make sure you loosen them all the way. You'll know if you missed one at the end of it when you try to pry it up. So when you go through, you might want to just go through like this and make sure that every single bolt's loosened. Especially on the inside, they're really hard to see, like certain ones. I kept moving this out of the way, tucking in or out. So the valve cover is going to stick a little bit, and you don't want to be prying too hard on the bolt and then realize, oh hey, it's not supposed to do that. These two bolts back here are going to be the absolute hardest to get to, this one and that one. So for this one, I used this into the E10, and then I used a swivel joint, and then this kind of angled up like right here, and I loosened it. Okay, that one was fine. The back one, I just have the E10 directly into a swivel joint because it's not tall enough, and then to a longer extension, and then I'll just do a longer extension, and I have to try to be really careful not to strip it out because it's hard to tell if it's on there. So I'm trying to push directly down the angle it would be, and then loosen it. I'll keep it still. Okay, that one worked. So that's really it. I was trying to inspect along the back to see where the valve cover may be leaking or cracked, or it has natural little lines in it. Here it looks like there's oil leaks, so for sure there. Okay, it is starting to lift out. It still feels like it's hooked back here. Probably be more stuck here because the fluids leaning there, probably be more brittle and harder there too, also because the exhaust pipe is right there, the turbos. Alright, so see, this is an example of I clearly didn't loosen something. I'm gonna loosen the coolant tank and try to move it back. Okay, well, it's not much, but that's a tiny bit. Okay, it's off, but it's Alright, sorry about that. Okay, so this is the problem right here. You really have to lift this up. You'll be able to feel it. It's not too tight to get this off. And just to show the clips on the back I was talking about. Right here. Those kind of just bend this up and then release the wires out. Actually, this valve cover gasket looks okay. Yep, I think this valve cover gasket was actually replaced. So I got another one that I probably didn't need. But it still feels soft even on this side, so I think it was okay actually. But I'm going to take it off, clean it off. Try to remove it all in one piece so you can keep track of the pieces so you don't lose anything. Let's take these guys out. 13mm box wrench. Okay. Clean it up a bit actually. So this is the old one stuck in here. Yeah. Is that the O-ring? Oh, that's the O-ring. God, it's hard as a rock. Yeah. It's slightly sticking out, but should just slide in there. This is the aftermarket burger tuning one. I think if it doesn't fit, you just shave down this things a little bit, I think. To clean that up a little bit. Just scrape that back in. I would definitely change the PCV valve. If you're already taking the valve cover off. I clean the edges off. If you have anything in here, you have to pick it out, but I didn't. And then I blew out the crevices with the compressed air. So the worst part of the job was cleaning the head, also in that bottom crevice where the electrical wires are blocking the access for most of it. I found it hard to get tools in there too. I used brake cleaner, carb cleaner, non-chlorinated stuff, but what I ended up going with was WD-40. Scraping the thing while I do it. Alright, so now it's all in. I'm gonna go make sure it's pressed kind of hard, so hopefully it stays in when I flip it. When I cleaned this, I ended up using a brass brush because brass won't scratch in there. I tried using a plastic tool, but it wasn't working very well. I ended up gently using a paint scraper gently to get off some of the valve cover gasket residue where I could, and then WD-40 seemed to do the trick. I just soaked it with WD-40 and then just very gently, and then I ended up wiping it off with carb cleaner. I got as best I could. I spent an hour and I'm done. So that's that. Appears I might be able to get more leverage if I take these two plugs out. So actually I'm gonna add that to the list to take these two plugs out. They have metal clips you just push in right here. So it's definitely easier with two people. Pretty much covered over, so I'm going to go through with my hand around the entire thing and make sure that nothing is unseated. The only part that seems to be giving me issues is this part right here. Right here. I got caught. And my battery died. I had to remove the cover again because this bolt I just noticed was broken off in the engine. So I believe it was like that before because this one was also changed by whoever did this last. So I'm gonna have to figure out a way to get this back out. Great, and where did that go? After two broken drill bits and the one reverse thread one's not working, I finally got reverse drill bit threads that worked. Except my drill doesn't stay tight when I use reverse with this, so I have to do it by hand, but it is working. Praise Jesus. And I found both drill bits that shattered off. One I had to dip in here with the magnetic thing and randomly find it in oil. That was just sheer luck. Must have searched for 20 minutes. It's the highlight of my week. I couldn't get it to stick in there, so what I did is I put the bit in my drill and put on reverse in the highest power, and I just pushed really hard and I zapped it before it loosened on the drill, and then kind of caught in here apparently, and I just started loosening it with the pliers and it magically started coming out. So I finally got it out, and I used a 1/8 bit because the smaller ones were breaking, and I didn't mess up the threads. And I used this sort of reverse drill bit as opposed to these because these just did not catch or work no matter how deep I drilled the first hole. You could see hopefully how deep I drilled that. Oh. I'm going to blow it out and clean it out again, put the valve cover back on, and then I'm going to swap two bolts out. So I'm going to order two bolts that were missing and just leave them like up here and here for now. So I'm not going to drive the car, but I will clean it up, put the cover back on. I've finger tightened them to hand tight every bolt except that really hard one right there. And I'll just do that last. And now what I'm going to do is torque them down. It's 75 inch per pound. Sorry. Yeah, no, inch pounds, right? God, I'm tired. My 2 hours of sleep is kicking in. Alright, so like I kind of did something like that, or like that. But keep in mind, don't over tighten these because that stud was broken off, and it wasn't me. I've never tightened these before, but I have to. And this one was broken off too, apparently. I guess it's that light. Yeah, these are extremely light. I mean, 75 inch pounds. I'll double check that number, but it's literally like tightening it till you feel pressure and then stopping. So keep that in mind. If you don't have a torque wrench and you just want to feel it out and you're that good, normally I just feel it out, but on this one I'm gonna decide after the fact because that bolt. I am putting the car back together now because I realized I didn't order the, I ordered them, but they're at the wrong address for the seals for the intake manifold, so I can't do the walnut blasting today, so I'm going to do something else. I tried to do the boost leak test to the top. It did not work out well because the intake piping on the turbo was leaking. If you do the boost leak test, it is a really rough test. I mean, if you have huge leaks, like here, you'd be able to feel air, spray some water with soap and see it, but realistically it needs to be, you need to put it somewhere upstream of the turbos. So like between the turbo outlet and the intercooler is where I'm going to do it. I just don't feel like taking off the bottom of the car. It's ridiculous. I put back the line here to the outlet, the vacuum, and connected it on both sides. Made sure this little notch is faced upwards like it was. I put the fuel rail back on and I tried to line it up. I did not put these bolts in first. I actually made sure I finger tightened all of these first before I put the bolts in because these weren't threading correctly. I had to kind of lift up a little bit, lift this just a little bit this way in order to do it, and then they all start just threading in instantly. I'm still waiting for the replacement bolt for this and that right there, but since they're accessible without the fuel rail being in the way, I just went ahead and I'm gonna put the car back together. I'm not gonna start it though. On reassembly, if these parts of the connectors, the fuel injectors, I tightened it with the box wrench just till it's too tight to move. I mean, basically a little past hand tight, and then just like a quarter turn or less. And when you're tightening these, I just realized that some of the injectors might not be held down that tight, so you want to make sure the injector stays straight, because if it turns a little bit, you can just put something here to keep it straight. Even like a giant box wrench that's kind of loose, as long as it doesn't hold it, you can just put it over the top. But I would just basically, it's not a lot of pressure. You can probably just hold it with your hand like this. If it turns, if it does, keep it straight, and then maybe tighten this nut down a little bit. The specific measurement is 17 foot-pounds, but to do this you need one of these adapters, which I happen to have from my first car. And so you put it around there, and then I set this for 17, and then it's already clicking. So it's basically, you can just tighten these by hand, and then knowing when to stop, just not too tight at all. But if you really need, you can do this. It's not as serious, I think, as the valve cover. It's not as hard to tell, because those are hard to tell, so I would just advise doing that. On this one here, like, I tightened it and it stopped right there, and that's it. Like, I'm not pushing hard, but I can tell it won't go any further, and that's basically 17 foot-pounds. Quick note, when putting the bolts back here, the rail was slightly off, but still this side was more important in my opinion. What I did is I just took a bar and put it right there and just gently put pressure that way, and they align no problem. And then I just threaded this one to this one. It's just very little flex, but if that's the case, go ahead and just give it a little pressure. So you need to put back the guides, so you can see down like right here to see when it's going in. So let's see if I can do the second one in view. So right there is when the like locking part hits, and then hopefully that's in view. And I'm just going to take a pair of needle nose on the edges where, and open it outwards on the edges where it's not split, and just spread it and then snap it down. So that's it, it kind of snapped in. It's about I don't know, it's about an inch. Should be an inch down. Less than half an inch, you know it's not in all the way. And then this one, if you really want to be precise, you can get like a piece of pipe the exact size, and it should help to put it in there. Yeah, so just make sure you put all 6 of those back. These should just snap in nice and easy. There shouldn't be a lot of pressure to push these in, unless this one's bent, but really don't need to push them in that far. So just gently click in. Just connect the O2 sensor clips back in, and put them back over the edge of the rail here, like there, and there's one here but it broke. And then connect the injectors. Make sure that you do them the right way. The clasp, the hinge part faces the cabin of the car, and the clasp part faces the front of the car, so you'll see and it gets a nice snap in there. Make sure it snaps in. There should be no force pushing against it because you might bend a pin if it's the wrong way. And connect the grounds. Okay, so just a note, making sure you line up the fuel injector clips right. They kind of go forward and curve up, and the very last one is hidden in the back. You'll see you'll be able to follow the line. And then on the grounding loops, there's little notches on the right and left. I feel like those are meant for this, so I'm lining them up in the notch to the right. They kind of click in, and so I can avoid putting wires in front of the coil packs if I don't have to. I'm doing it this way, so because there's a wire between the harness for the coil pack, some of them might not have enough length like this. If I were to turn the screw the other way towards the cabin, it might not pull. So. And then I'm just tightening them. So right there, it's just tension stopped, and then I'm just doing like quarter turn. Right there, stopped, quarter turn. They don't need to be that tight at all. So I'm also gonna, don't forget to reconnect this harness in the back right here. Don't forget to clip that back into the back of the valve cover. Number 2, if I recall. Okay, I'm guessing those are the O2 sensor. And then this one right here is the coil pack. So there's 3 total that clip in. Yeah, that's all I can feel. So I just make sure I put them back in that clip in the back. Make sure if you took any of these connectors off, I unplugged these 2 actually eventually, that you put them back in the correct way. The metal clip that you squeeze in goes on this side. It faces the radiator. Put the 2 bolts back in the giant harness. When you tighten these, remember it's just going into plastic. It does not need to be tight at all. You can install your coil packs now and then just push the plug on. The further you push the plug, the more it snaps that. So if you look, I don't know, I never noticed this until my second time changing the spark plugs. This little spot is meant for this little thing. So when you push it down and lock it, make sure it's in that spot right there. I forgot to mention that when you connect the O2 sensors back, again, there's that plug on the fuel rail back here that you need to reconnect. Well, I keep saying this right here, the hose that connected back here kind of by the PCV, that's the Craig vent hose. It's not a vacuum line. I keep mispronouncing that, so in case that confuses anybody, that's the crank vent hose. So yesterday I took these bolts out of the coolant reservoir to move it slightly, which didn't really help much, but just put those 2 back. And don't forget the 2 little vacuum lines here, whether you took them out here or here, don't forget to put those back. Just don't forget to connect your vacuum lines and your 2 things, and it just sits on the prongs here. This back on, put the intake back on, the 2 screws. Make sure you tighten the clamps, make sure you clip all 5 clips here, put this line on. Make sure you reattach the battery cable right here, which I'm sure you took off, and then put the bar back on here. And I'll put torque specs on that if necessary. And then I'm waiting to put the engine cover on because I got to put those 2 screws in. Make sure all your vacuum lines, if you took anything else off over here, is back on. Make sure to put the lid back on there when you seal that. It's pretty funny actually, I forgot to screw this on. I knew I forgot something. I was so tired yesterday, and so I started the car and gas just went everywhere. So I'm gonna go hose it down, but it's kind of funny. I need to notate that to make sure you screw that in.